let's not take credit for our Father's good deeds. I decided that before I go on with a third and probably the final installment of me talking about mud flood, at least for the time being, that I would answer some of the questions, concerns, comments left on the first two videos. So this comment here says that my video simply does not debunk the last Atlantis empire they call Tartaria, the remains of which the government now inhabit. First and foremost, you'd have to first provide some evidence for these grandiose claims. You haven't, so don't shift the burden of proof. I don't have to debunk any of that. Never said that I was doing that in the video. That's not even what the video was about, right? I'm not going to keep repeating what the video was about, because all you have to do is listen to what the video is about, as stated in the video about which you're commenting. What about the European tunnels with mega? What about them, right? So there was a flood. Yeah, floods exist. Yes. And the flood I was talking about was the biblical flood from officially, right? 6,000 or something like that years ago. And I may have some evidence of that event. A wall, literally 5 meters from where I'm making this video. Maybe 10. Okay, 15. Less than 100 all over the damn place. Maybe, right? But right, once again, you're confusing two different topics, so we're going to leave it at that. Tartaria. Okay, so Milk Tea Alliance says he's been researching Tartaria. But he already assumed that this thing, Tartaria, right, which was some kind of global empire or something along those lines, global civilization, existed, right? But there's no evidence for any of this. The evidence from which this whole conspiracy theory started, this myth started, was a map of Tartaria, or what the Europeans used to call Asia, right? Before they called it Asia, they called it Tartaria, right? Just like Germania was northern, central, maybe central and Western Europe, right? Mostly Central Europe, I guess. So, yeah, there's no. How did you make the leap from, some old map, lumping erroneously so lumping all Asians together as Tartars, right? And how did you extrapolate that to an empire that stretched to Australia, like where's that link, right? We can't even be. We could talk about that Tartaria, right? Let's go to that part of the world. It's weird because that's the birthplace of that place, right? And the whole theory. But all these videos about Tartaria are in the West. I mean, what is there to debunk? It's nonsense, right? I analyzed the Tartarian, right? So anytime without having provided this link for which I just asked, calling these, you're just assuming these are Tartarian buildings. If they are Tartarian buildings, then maybe one of them could have Tartar written on them, or maybe something along those lines, right? I don't know, like, so just like a lot of people, this guy is just assuming all of his all these things that he imagined to exist to be true, right? And from there, like, what, I'm supposed to just grant you your presupposition without you showing me any evidence for this? right? Yeah, Tartaria existed. It was Asia. That's what Europeans called it. Romans called it. Uh, those people over there had different names for the various regions of what we today call Asia, right? Go ask them. So it's just like, whatever. It's nonsense, right? Unless you can prove that it isn't, which you haven't done. So there's nothing to debunk. All I have to do is I don't even have to do I do it because it's because so many people have been possessed by this idea and believe it so strongly, right? Without having shown any evidence for this, right? Like, yeah, there's some evidence of this or that, but this global mud flood event, right? There's no evidence for this. You haven't like linked all. You haven't put all the puzzle pieces together. You have this like grand idea, complete puzzle, right? And you're just describing the pieces. But from using the paradigm of the complete puzzle, which is just imaginary. Like this is you're you're reverse engineering a fairy tale, right? Where's the evidence? So you don't technically all you have to do is just ask for evidence because you don't have any evidence. But the little bits and pieces of the evidence that people think they have, right? I, I just showed you, I just gave you the explanations for the things that you say are unexplained, right? This is, and what you'll see constantly is why, and this explains to you why this sort of thinking is fallacious, is because over and over and over and over, the people that believe this fairy tale, and it could be true, right? But where's your evidence? The people that believe this fairy tale, they make their argument from ignorance, right? Time and time and time again, they say, how could they do this? And then they go on without researching how they did it or how it happened. They say, it couldn't have happened. We weren't able to do this unless there was a great mud flood. We had some amazing, lost technology, right? It's an argument from ignorance. If there was this great, amazing technology and all these things that you say existed, right? You have to show evidence of this technology, right? Where are the machines? Where are the factories that built the machines, right? Where are the manuals on how to operate the machinery, how to build this machinery, how to use this technology? Where are the manuals, right? For example, in the Vedic scripture, we have a description of the Vimanyas, right? And there's description of the technology, at least to some degree, how these things flew around, right? These flying objects. And then, from what we understand, the Nazis researched this technology based on. That's why they were looking for evidence in lost tech all over the world. That's why Hitler had all these archaeological expeditions to Tibet, India, Africa, Middle East, all over the place, right? And from what they were able to piece together, apparently they were able to build UFOs, right? Except we have a pretty good idea of what they are, so meaning they're not UFOs, right? They, but there's evidence for all of this, right? And it wasn't Tartaria; it was ancient India, right? And it's like something along those lines. Do you, for this Tartaria? Do you have anything like that, right? Where's the evidence? That's the question. So if the theory is again of some great global flood that affected the entire globe, right? And then this is the evidence of this. If I take that evidence that you say is of this global cataclysm, you never even connected the dots. Why the same cataclysm happened in Chicago and in Poland, Central Europe, or any of these places? You haven't connected any of these dots. And how come you don't have any evidence of this in Tartaria, the Asia? Where's the evidence of all that stuff there? Like, it doesn't make any sense. It's nonsense. Not to say that there isn't, you know, yeah, history is a lie for the most part. Uh, technology, the techniques, uh, the ability to do certain things, produce, build stuff. Yeah, a lot of that has been lost, right? And I explained to you why. I gave you hints as to why it may have been lost. World War One, World War Two, right? Why did people forget? Because they were exterminated. They died. They were displaced. Grandmothers and grandfathers were killed, or their kids were killed. They had no one to tell the stories to because they ran in different directions and lost touch with one another, right? The the printing presses were destroyed. People didn't write books for a while. People didn't communicate. Why do you remember the things that you did in your childhood? Why do you remember them? Because you keep recounting all those stories amongst your family members and friends. But if you in your young age move out of the place where you were born and you don't take anybody or hardly anybody with you, you're going to forget all those stories. Little by little, you're going to forget because you don't have, you may or may not, right? You may do it over the internet, I guess, but it's more likely that you will forget them because it's less likely that you'll have a chance to sit down, at a dinner or whatever, at a bar with the people you grew up with, recounting all those stories and reminding yourself of the details and everything that happened. That's how you forget. We, as kids, would dig holes in the ground, right? Deep, big, long, like sometimes essentially underground houses, and we would chop down trees and cover them with logs and then, branches and stuff, and we essentially created these underground houses, kind of dwelling type things, right? And me as a kid participating in this, right, like an 8 to 12-year-old kid participating in this stuff, I just thought it was fun. That's why I did it. But with us there were, also 20-year-olds, 25-year-olds, people that were just doing this, right? And it didn't dawn on me until just recently when I started thinking about, well, why did we do this? Well, why did we do this? Because our for some of the older people doing this, right? Their fathers, for some of the younger ones, our grandfathers, right? Well, they were engaged in guerrilla warfare and they dug trenches. They dug uh, dwellings and hiding places, tunnels in the ground where, well, they could hide from the enemy and then come out at night or what have you and uh, carry out various guerrilla warfare operations, right? Well into the 50s, fighting the Soviet army, right? This was just in our culture. But I was just doing it because the older boys did it. And the older boys, maybe a lot of them understood why they did it because they talked to their grandfathers and their fathers, and they had these like um, little, what are they called? The shovels, but like military type, the folding ones and whatever. They had military equipment. So, some of them had like old military hats or boots. Uh, People had like unexploded or grenades, shells, all kinds of like relics of the Second World War. And they had stories that their fathers or grandfathers told them. And it was just in their psyche, and they wanted to be like dad or granddad, and they took these tools and little relics to, and they used these tools and I don't know, the spirit or the memory of some of these other artifacts, and they channeled it into doing the things that their parents did, their fathers or grandfathers did, right? But me being from one of the younger generations where those boys did not communicate to me why they were doing this stuff, right? Even though we were engaging in the same activity, I didn't really understand why, and it didn't dawn on me until recently why we were doing this, right? So if there's kids in my hometown to this, they're not. They completely forgot. But if maybe some of them are somewhere, right? They probably have no clue why. Anyway, that was a long tangent. So instead of addressing the stuff that I'm talking about, right? This guy's talking about Tartarian buildings and concrete and phone lines and buildings and Atlantis and carvings, right? Like none of which has anything to do with my video. So it's like, well, he hasn't assumed the conclusion. It's just calling it what it's called. Atlantean. So now he's saying Atlantean is Tartarian, which is complete and utter nonsense because Atlanteans or Atlanticists today, and there's truth to that, right? They're seafaring peoples. Tartarians are horseback riding people from the steppes. And these two civilizations are fighting each other today, but he uses them interchangeably as if they were one and the same, right? But this is exactly the psyop that I'm talking about. One global fucking empire. Erasing of differences. One ring to rule them all. Like, he's just proving my point, not realizing it. He has come to his own ideas through research and walking around his own city and realizing things, right? So this is just words. I'm giving you concrete evidence, historical facts, right? Logical explanations. And he's saying, well, how else could this have happened other than mud flood? Okay, where's the evidence of mud flood in light of these facts? So I just took all these evidences that you thought you had from mud flood. I just took that away from you, which strengthened your belief in mud flood. Like, that doesn't make any sense. You're illogical. Where's the evidence, right? Okay, there were and no need to, like, I mean, you can if you want to make this shit personal, get all triggered, like, if you want. I don't care ultimately, but there's really no need for any of that. All right, let's see. There were more comments on this video. Since mud flood blew up near the end of flat earth era of the tube, I classified the eyebrow-raising architecture of the 1800 picture stuff like the Chicago World Fair material as not recent flood evidence. So we go from, and yeah, I agree, I talked about it in other videos, there's something really shady about the World's Fair, right? But we're going from potentially unexplained or a little weird things about the World Fair to mud flood. No, those things were burnt in the fire. Mud flood, see, this is the thing, like mud flood, and it's just a whole bunch of nonsense confusion. Not to say that there isn't any truth to some of this stuff, because, well, for a good psyop to work, it has to have nuggets of truth in there. So yeah, the things, these buried buildings, halfway buried, first floors or what have you, yeah, that had to do with flooding and earth. For sure it did, right? But at least in the cases that I presented to you, which mud flood researchers don't even go that far, they just say, look, this building is buried, therefore mud flood. It's nonsense. Of course it is. Right? But like all of a sudden the world's fairs and everything gets like thrown in with mud flood, and it's all part of this. Holy shit, you can't even prove one major myth, right? Like mud flood. I already explained what it is. Let's not confuse it, okay? You can't even prove that one thing, and it just got debunked the way you presented it, right? So you should at the very least take some steps back and restructure this theory, change the theory, that at the very least, if not completely throw it out, you gotta explain how it still makes sense in light of all the facts, historical facts, logical, reasonable, simple, right? Occam's razor, simple explanations that I provided to you. And I'm not saying this person is doing that, right? I'm not saying that, but this is, they are communicating to me what's happening out there, right? You can't even prove this one part of this great Tartaria theory, right? Mud flood, completely debunked. But you're just gonna keep piling and all these theories together, putting everything together, and you're like, you're gonna reconstruct some kind of great empire, right? It's weird. We somehow had this great empire 150 years ago or something like that, right? And yet we all speak different languages. We have completely different cultures. None of us like one another. You know what I mean? Like we don't even have the same with train tracks that have been with us for 150 years, right? But somehow we communicated and had one cohesive worldwide empire when you can't even ride a train from Western Europe to Russia because the width of train tracks is different. Okay. I'm sorry, that's how stupid this shit is, right? But yeah, at the same time, yeah, like we've been lied to. Of course, people have been, like Columbus didn't discover America, right? There were already people there of all races. Yeah, but that doesn't mean that there were Tartars, right? You had like black, uh, Native American, whatever that means, right? Uh, Mixture of Asian and white, and probably a little bit of black white people. You had, you know, Asian phenotype, black phenotype, white phenotype, some really big people apparently, and also, like mixed races like the Reds, right? In the Americas. But some Portuguese converser shows up and he discovers it. Come on, yeah, of course it's nonsense, but you don't go from that to therefore Tartaria. Like, it's just, come on, that's stupid. It is. Anyway, World Fair material as not recent. I classified the eyebrow-raising architecture of the 1800 picture stuff like the Chicago World Fair material as not recent flood evidence, but along the lines of Smithsonian hiding giant bones, Noah's flood possibilities. Yeah, they're definitely hiding a lot from us. And, look at the Vatican vault library, right? It can be rabbit holes that burn useful time to more important stuff to try to be more independent and raise families and tribes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just addressing this comment in general, yeah, there are lost civilizations for sure, right? And there's a lot of unexplained artifacts. So try to explain them instead of just being like Tartaria. Tartaria. Well, I don't know what this is, but mainstream history doesn't know either, and or they're lying to me about it, therefore Tartaria. That's not logical. That's just stupid. How much truth exists in the mud flood theories is where everybody is trying to discern. Well, a lot of people are, but a lot of people just, they assumed mud flood, right? And every conclusion is mud flood because they just assumed it. Despite the fact that I just debunked mud flood, I did. Which isn't to say, and we'll get to that in another video, like sometimes, like I haven't even finished my series, right? And people, one person is just jumping ahead of everything and talking about shit that he's not even addressing the videos. Come on, man. Like, you can't even be logical. You lack patience, you lack logic, you lack discipline. But you're some kind of great researcher. Get out of here. Researcher. The question is how much of what we know is actual. Yeah, I get that. Totally. Yeah, we've been lied to, for sure. But we're doing the exact same thing. We're lying right back, right? Instead of seeking the truth, we're just lying right back. Because again, I'm showing you evidence to the contrary of this nonsense that people are spewing out there, and they're not accepting the evidence, right? You don't combat lies with more lies. That's not how it works. Yeah, but I completely agree. Yeah, history is to a large degree a lie. We've been manipulated, blah, 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 so on and so forth, of course. Milk Tea Alliance once again says, you are comparing a wooden barn to a brick structure. Who even knows if the cobble floor is glued together and the cement can easily melt with earth, thus breaking the base? What? First of all, I made a comparison of the wooden barn to the wooden houses that were moved by different means. They used horses and rollers to move wooden houses, wooden structures in Chicago. So yeah, it can be done. And where the comparison was to a brick building, I qualified it, right? A brick or stone building wasn't being moved laterally or relocated. It was just lifted up in the air with like thousands of jacks. If you just look at the weight of the building and how many jacks they used, it makes perfect sense that they had enough jacks to jack up all this weight, right? And if you're doing it in unison, and like it took 4 days to lift one of these buildings. So they were like lifting it little by little, very gently, very slowly. After they got all the jacks in place, it probably took them 12 hours or something to just lift the damn thing. And they had a conductor, if you will, an engineer, giving everyone, you know, uh, directing everybody to lift, 1/100th of an inch in unison or something, like very, very slowly, gingerly, tenderly. And they did it, right? In my opinion, they damaged the buildings. They were able to lift them up and put a new foundation under them, but I think they damaged them. Because years, not like 12, 15, I forget what it was, less than a couple of decades later came the Great Chicago Fire and destroyed all those buildings, right? Was that, and the whole thing with Chicago Fire is shady as fuck too, right? How did it cross the river? What? A cow knocked over a lantern and burned down mortar, brick, masonry buildings? I think they probably damaged them. They were good enough to stand and look the part, but they realized that they did damage to these buildings and maybe probably sabotaged them and destroyed them just to avoid the shame and notice that stuff like that they haven't really, not that I know of anyway, haven't attempted to do stuff like that since, right? Yeah, they probably damaged a lot of the big buildings. They were able to lift them up, but damaged them. But maybe not all of them. I think it's completely possible to lift a small enough masonry, brick and mortar building without damaging it irreparably, right? I think that's completely possible. Why not? I mean, there's buildings that have withstood earthquakes, right? Huge buildings that have withstood earthquakes for hundreds of years, right? Maybe even thousands. And this is not like an earthquake, because an earthquake shakes and rattles unevenly, right? The forces are redistributed through the building like shock waves. And somehow these buildings withstand that stuff. But what, you can't lift them without them just crumbling right in front of you? You can't use technology and controlled, in a very, very controlled manner, very gently, gingerly, and lift the stone building up? But it could withstand an earthquake? Get out of here, man. That being said, yeah, I think they probably did damage them. And thus, Chicago Fire. Cobble floors glued together and the cement can easily meld with earth. The cement doesn't easily meld with earth. Like, dude, you've never built anything in your life. Stop lying. Okay, you're just saying nonsense. Can some dirt stick to the cement? Yeah, but then you got dirt on top of dirt that crumbles off, and so you have some cement that's dirty. That's all you have. It's not like the crust of the earth is just one salt. Come on, man. Just get out your house, man. And I, by myself, lifted a shipping container a meter up in the air. All by myself. How did I do that? It's impossible, right? If I put it up on rocks, right? And I welded metal beams to it, metal supports and all that other stuff, right? I lifted a container a meter off the ground, right? All by myself. How did I do that? Using the kind of technology they had available to them. All by myself. And it's not like I was 2 car jacks, right? Real simple. 2 car jacks, a whole bunch of bricks and wooden planks and stuff like that, right? It took 3 days, but I did it. How? How can... But like 3,000 men with, or 6,000 men with 6,000 jacks can't lift a building up in unison, right? But one person can lift, I don't know, a 1 ton or two, whatever it weighs, 2 ton container by himself. Get out of here, man. Like, go outside. Seriously. This was a very good point, I thought. Due to increased forest clearance and building more towns and infrastructure stuff upstream and in the not too distant past, floodplains flooded higher and rivers flooded banks together. So it made sense to build higher. Whereas before, buildings didn't get flooded until, agriculture and the chopping down, destruction of forests, right? Anyone who has ever felled trees, that after a rain, or like here in the rainy season, they're much heavier than in the dry season. Why? Because they're full of water, right? So if you have forests surrounding your town, it's not likely to flood as much, if at all, right? Simple shit. Real simple shit. 200 years ago, they had wooden shanty towns. LOL. How do you go from wooden cubes to elaborate giant marble structures a year later? I don't know. How? You're the researcher. You're supposed to research, right? You've researched this stuff. How? Right? This is the argument from ignorance. Oh, I don't know how. Therefore, Tartaria. Therefore, mud flood. Like, come on. It's a logical fallacy. That's it. I don't even have to address any of this because you're making a logical fallacy. The sheer magnitude of the lie being told. Yeah, okay. This video debunks nothing sadly. I am not emotionally offended. Okay. I just want to. You're not emotionally. If you're so unemotional about this, you can't even fucking spell basic words. I can typing. You haven't really debunked flooding anything, and you haven't addressed anything about right. No, no, no. I'm giving you, I'm giving you evidence, right, and historical fact, and this person is just saying no, 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 no. Yeah, great going. And then we go to, Tartaria being Atlantean saints, humans of higher consciousness, stuff and things and words and amazing because, well, right, this is, yeah, cool, right? The Atlantean seafaring civilization is all of a sudden the horseback riding Tartarian civilization, right? Because fury, dark fury. That makes sense? Dobry materiał, niestety często łatwiej dopisać historię niż sprawdzić, co za nią stoi. Czekam na kolejne odcinki. Yeah, exactly, right? Right? Right. That's a barn. Like, right? Gee, you think I didn't know that? Like, you really gotta put your thinking caps on, and you gotta do better than that. That's a barn. Like, you don't think I considered that? Raising Chicago up 14 feet of dirt. That's a lot of dirt to bring in with horses. Is there any pictures of them bringing in the dirt and raising the city? I don't know. Are there? That's my question, right? Have you researched this? Are there? I bet you there are. Go find them, right? So it was up to 14 feet some places less than that. That's a lot of dirt to bring in with horses. Are there any pictures of them doing that? Are there? So why did you picture horses? So at the time they were doing this, Chicago had the most developed railroad in the world. You think maybe they also use trains, like those train tracks that run alongside the Chicago River, go all the way downtown, north, east, west, and south, like just from the center of downtown Chicago, just like a spider web, go out all over the place. Chicago at that time had something like 10 different railroads converging there. You think maybe they used trains to do this? You know, like how like they used trains to bring in coal that all the houses at the time burnt? And yeah, to get it in this or that place specifically, far enough away from the train tracks, yeah, I'm sure they used wheelbarrows, they used horse and buggy carts, they used street cars that they had, right? Rail cars that they had. They used whatever they had. And it took them 20 years to do this. Hmm? Have you ever moved dirt? I bet not. I bet you've never moved dirt. And how was I able to go from a 12-inch wide path on my property to one that's anywhere between 1 meter to 5 meters wide? How was I able to do that? I didn't have any horses. I didn't have any machines, right? Me and a worker did it all by hand. It took a long ass fucking time, but we did it. How did we do that? By getting our fucking hands dirty and getting to work. Right? It's your job. This is another argument from ignorance, right? I can't fathom how they could have possibly done it, so it's a lie. And then assuming that all they had was horses when they had the most developed railroad in the world. Man, you know, I was expecting this. And this is the problem with this whole mud flood nonsense, right? The videos that get the views are the videos of people who say mud flood, yes, or probably, or very interesting. Why this? Why that? It's the people who asked all these questions instead of answering them. Right? Because it allows our imaginations to run wild and imagine some amazing, benevolent society where everyone lived in peace and, you know, all this utopian fucking commie nonsense, right? Yeah, right. Sure. And there's so many contradictions in this community, right? Like, oh, we had ancient, amazing, great lost technology when it's convenient. And then, like, they move dirt by horse and buggy? I mean, come on, people. Anyway, that's my video. You know what I mean? But one last thing, again. Videos like this debunking this stuff are not going to get a lot of views, right? There's a huge disproportion because the truth isn't all that interesting, is it? But to some people it is. People interested in the truth it is, but people interested in utopian fucking dreams and engaging their whatever wishes for a better world because they realize how fucked up it is, right? Trying to imagine this utopian place people run away to, stuck in their mama's basement on their computer, instead of creating or moving in the direction of that world, right? Truth fucking hurts. Things are sad sometimes, but true, right? It's so much better to just let your imagination run, you know, run wild and imagine things that never were, because it feels good in this current. That's why these psyops are so effective. That's why you're not making any sense. You're contradicting yourself. Great ancient technologies, right? Horse and buggy. So great ancient amazing technology, mud flood. All these, like, I'm supposed to believe all these tools, factories, machines, knowledge, manuals, books, people are just gone, wiped up off the face of the planet because half of a floor of every building got covered with mud, right? And we go from all that grand civilization, amazing technology, to we're not able to do anything. Horse and buggy. Fuck out of here, man. Like, but this is the disproportion I'm talking about, right? Videos actually, people actually trying to find and show you the truth. That's not interesting. So what predominates out there is people just feeding your fucking imagination. These energy vampires, inertia generators, making coin, grifters, making coin off your dumbasses. Get mad. I don't care. Sick and tired of the bullshit, right? And because there's so much of it out there, because you keep feeding that fucking beast, it reinforces your preconceived notions of a world that never existed. Instead of actually looking at the truth, which isn't at all interesting, and it bursts your fucking bubble. So there's a huge disproportion here, right? Thus, the public who is interested in this type of stuff generally will believe it because, well, look at all these videos, right? Argument ad populum, right? Argumentum ad populum. Fallacy of popularity. Well, this is popular. This is what most people seem to think, so it must be right. Logic has nothing to do with any of this. That being said, yes, there's a lot of hidden history. I mean, have you not seen any of my videos? We've been told a lot of lies, yes. Technology, knowledge has been hidden from us, absolutely. That's why they tell us Gnosticism bad, right? Knowledge bad. Veda, wiedza, wiedźma. Shout out to all the real motherfuckers out there. Crybabies, go on crybabies. Thanks for watching. Oh, almost forgot. Do not blame the son for his father's sins. Take care.